It says live. Moderation helps everyone feel safe. Ha! Add moderators to your channel. No, I don't think so. All we need is a few more fact checkers to tell. Good morning. You like that? Sex strikes and alternators? Is your alternator on strike? Oh, shoot. I just had the sex strike. Everyone. Ladies, if there's a lady listening to this, you will not be offended. Because a true lady is a beautiful woman, and it doesn't matter how she looks. You get my drift? Trust me on that. One of the sweetest ladies I ever knew was down here and 80 years old, had no figure whatsoever. She had something happen to the side of her face. One eye was gone and sunken in. Old white, coarse hair. She had the sweetest voice, and she could play the piano like you couldn't believe, arthritis and all. And her husband could sing, and he and she were not on the same page, and he said, "Wrong song, woman." I could see a slight smirk. He was trying not to smirk. And she's over there laughing her face off. Oh, that's right. Hang on, I'll turn the page. Well, come on. Everybody's waiting. Oh, my goodness, it was fun. So that's one of the things that, those who are on a sex strike, rock on, please do. Two reasons. One of them is most of you are so ugly, miserable, mean, and angry. We don't care. It doesn't change a thing. It's just you shooting your mouth off. And some of you go home to your girlfriends. Somehow I don't think procreation's going to happen there. Especially you're with a tranny and you say, well, we could. Well, that's not a tranny. They're not done yet. You're still with a dude. Doesn't matter if he's in a skirt or not. Sex strike. Some of the ugliest women on the planet. Mean, ugly, not just. Oh, shoot. There was a woman I tried to get a date with just to go out and say hi. We were old friends from way back. I mean, neighbors, literally. I mean, go across this street to the other neighbor, and then Oak Street, First Street. And there's 2 rows of houses in between, facing First, facing Oak. Go behind, 2 houses up. There they are. Their mother was very famous with her CB radio that was a little bit hyped.
No, it wasn't. I don't have no linear amplifier. I don't have my set that's been hopped up. I don't have.
Oh, yes, she did. She had all of the above. She had the set hopped up from 4 or 5 watts up to someplace near 10. And she had, how in the world could she? I don't know, but they did. And when she wanted, flip comes on the linear amplifier. And it was an old set that didn't have the same frequency hold to it. Oh, it was something. Dave's Auto Center. Hey, guy. Anyway, to go on from the sex strike, go ahead. Please do. It's not going to affect anything. But this girl I tried, she was somebody that was homely too, but it was a friend and a neighbor. And when we were in the hood, what the heck? We were nice enough to each other. Why not just say hi? Come back in the area after 20 years. Don't you people from divorce, you've got a lot of baggage. No, I'm sorry, I'm not interested. Not interested either. Just sit down, fill me in. I'm trying to figure out what I've missed in the last 20 years. Yeah, but you're divorced. So what's that got to do with, we go out for coffee, say hi, hello, and go home. We're just friends, right? No, I can't be friends with somebody like you with that much baggage. So a while later, Debbie and I are engaged, having a discussion. Even before engagement, we know the wedding's coming. We're unofficially engaged. And I have a discussion. What in the world is that all about? And it's just, I don't know. She's not that much younger than us, because she knew the woman. The problem is that we never took the chance. That's why we're single into our 40s. If there's baggage, it's here, and it's long term. You went into the divorce, you had a couple of kids, you tried to work it out. She says, I have no doubt about that. Or we wouldn't even be dating now. So besides that, I come approved by your mother. She said, shut up. So what was the reason? She was truly, it didn't matter. She could have glammed herself up and looked beautiful, but she just looked average. But still, was a friend. Let's go on a date and find out what happens. But I just wanted to say hello. No. That is what I'm talking about. If that's the type of woman you are, don't procreate, please. Okay? So we're in agreement. We have an agreement. Complete. We're on a sex strike. We've been telling you. We've been telling you to wait till marriage anyway. It works better. Woohoo! Idiots. Let's get to alternators because I see there's two in here. There's and the one I'm going to be talking about today are the Delco alternators that are the most common. There are some others, but there are some other alternators, and believe it or not, they hook up very similar. Okay. Now, there's several posts that are going to be on most of your alternators. All right. Now, here's the common post. You have to figure out which type they are, because on foreign alternators, they're marked different. Now, your Delco, what do they call them? 10 SI, 12 SI. They're very similar. In fact, they're almost identical. The only real difference is one has your standard 3 connectors, 2 out the top, the side, I guess you could say, and the hot lead out the back. All right. So you've got number 1, number 2, and over here, a hot lead. Well, on your side, be over here. Anyway, if you're going to hook this up traditionally, Napa has a great little plug. So you can, if you're going to put your spade connectors in there, A, make sure they're insulated, and B, be careful which way you put them. If you hook those up wrong and turn the power on, there should be no difference. If you can start your machine, it hasn't sat long. You heard me. If you hook number 1 up to hot power, it should make no difference. Stop. No. Take it like this. You hook number 1 up to hot power. The only difference is it'll slowly drain your battery. That's it. But there's 1,000 things that you can put on there. If you are putting this on an old diesel, replacing the generator, and you've got a mechanical shutoff, it doesn't matter. All you need is hot power to number 1, and from the key switch and from the back of the alternator, hook number 2 to the hot lead on the back of the alternator. You're done. It's all over. Well, no, wait, no, stop. Well, yeah, but no. Listen carefully. You know what the reason for the other one is? There's only one reason, and this is a funny one. They will put a 60 ohm, and I saw a 10 ohm in a diagram yesterday that actually turned out to be a diode, he said. Wrong picture, wrong description, wrong resistance number. Anyway, the idea is number 1 is hooked up to a key switch power. All that does is tell the alternator, hey, wake up. That's it. That's all its primary purposes. Secondary purposes. Once the alternator is running and charging, it will send power out from number 1 back up. Oh, that'll turn the light up. That's not the original design. The original design is you turn the key on, and if you have an idiot light connected, it'll send power right down there. If you have the right size idiot light, it'll send power down. And the idiot light is your resistor. All right? So while the idiot light is your resistor, you don't have a problem with backfeed. But if you have a diesel that shuts off mechanically, it's no problem. It doesn't matter. You can put an idiot light in there. You turn the key on. The alternator's ground. But juice is in there to turn it on. You fire the alternator up. 12 volt was very little milliamps comes back out. And because you have 12 and 12 on the idiot light, it turns off because there's no current flow. That's how that operates. Now, Alice-Chalmers, I can't remember what the reasoning totally was, but on some of their alternators, from the idiot light down, they had a 60 ohm resistance wire that always broke off and never told the alternator to turn on. And a lot of them were not Delco. Delcos were what they switched to. I think they had a Prestolite or something oddball, that became Motorola and Prestolite were almost identical. Same housing, same connectors, but supposedly 2 different manufacturers for some reason. But it's hard to know which one was which. And there's also a third brand name I can't remember that was almost identical as well. What was the difference? The difference on those was similar. They needed hot lead to go into the regulator. They had a key switch lead. They had the main hot lead, so there's the three, but what's the fourth? The fourth was a little one to take off from the pulses in the AC part of the alternator, alternating current going through diodes, making DC, AC to DC. And it would take off that ripple effect in the three phases of the alternator, could give you a feedback for frequency on a tachometer. You just needed to calibrate it. That's all that one was for. So you see a little brass stud sticking out the back. What in the world? Do I need to connect it? Well, if you don't have a calibrated tachometer for it, nope, just cover it up. So that's one thing. Now, here's the other one with it. With your standard 3-leg, what I have put on there is, and I'll have to go look it up on Amazon again, but there is, well, maybe I can do that anyway. But Briggs & Stratton has a diode on some of their smaller engines, 10 horse, 8 horse, 6, 7s, and such, that occasionally electric start, usually from 8 horse on up. 8, 10s, 12s, and they'll have an alternator in there that's 3 amp, 5 amp, 10 amp that are unregulated. What regulates it? The design and the speed. They put a diode in to take the AC 30 volts to 33 volts, and 28 barely works. But usually it's 30 volts up. And they put a diode in to cut one leg of the alternator off. So you have 30 volts going up, AC, full wave, plus, minus. That's what an alternator does, alternating current. The diode cuts one side off, so only positive energy comes out. Go back to charge the battery. And if you're 30 volts and up, you've got half the wave, you're talking 15 volts. So 28, 29, 30. And why do I say 30 is okay? Well, 30 even up to 33 works, because when you put the diode in and it's charging the battery, because amperage is flowing out of there, voltage always drops just a little bit. So if you're not flowing anything, it's trying to make watts, volts and amps. Amps don't flow, volts go up. So you hook it to a battery, they come right down. So that's why usually 30 to 33. Well, anyway, I see people have checked out, but I'm going to continue anyway. So that diode has a wire plug that goes with it. Now, these are on the old flathead engines and some of the angle head overhead valves, but mostly flathead engines, the old varieties. 19707s, 19400s, those series, 19900 series, talking between usually the 7 and 900s are vertical shaft, and then the 400s, 200s are horizontal shaft. And they have the same similar thing in there. And the diode has a connector for it as well. So if you have to replace the diode and you want to hook into the harness, just plug the rascal right into it and you're in great shape. If you don't have that harness or can't find it, even on Amazon, what I have done is taken a butt connector, squeezed the dimension of it so it would just go inside the plastic and connect. It works really well. So what do you do then? Well, you put a little silicone on it for glue to hold the two together and seal it. You're done. You just have to put it in the right direction so as you turn it on, power goes to the alternator. When the alternator is running, it comes out, hits the diode, and stops. Now, why do you do that? Well, on diesels with electric shutoff and gas engines, there's enough electricity that comes out of there to keep in the diesel to keep the solenoid energized. Once it is energized, it's just enough to hold it in. And on the other side, your ignition on your gas engines, there's enough power going in to keep enough spark to run the engine, not on their full load, but while you're sitting there trying to shut it off, some of them will bark and snort and then finally shut off. And then others will keep right on running as if nothing ever happened. So that's why you put a diode in. And the main reason with a resistor is if you get too much of a resistor, enough will still feed back, but you won't get enough out to get the alternator to actuate, turn on. So those are the problems you have with that one. So I told you about the 3 main terminals, the number 4 terminal that's out the back, it's off to the side somewhere for RPM takeoff. And those are your main concerns there. But while I'm here, and it's not even quite 15 minutes yet, let me put my thinking cap on, as they used to say in certain parts of the world. Let me go into my Amazon here, and I'll see if I can find you that. I have categories in here where I store stuff, whether I actually do anything with it or not. Your lists. I tried to cancel a bunch of orders. I don't think that's going to work. There's electrical. And let's see. Oh, there's another thing you can do as well. Yeah, I might have it in a different category, but I know I had it on here. There's an old condenser, a couple of regulators, some solenoids. I'll be dipped. I don't. One more to try. It shouldn't be where I think it is. Wish list fix it stuff. Let's try that. Some things that I haven't transferred. Now, I saw this in here the other day, and I'm not seeing it now. You usually have to look it up under a part number. That's the funny thing. No, I guess I should have checked beforehand. I must have deleted it without paying attention. Well, that's bad. Well, wait a minute. Here's small engine category. There are certain things I split up because that's the only place I use them. Spark plugs is one of them. General Electrical. Oh, wait a minute. Here we go. Got it. Okay, Stens. I don't have the original Briggs & Stratton number. The diode, it's a $10.04. Purchased 2 times. There it is. That's all it is a pigtail diode. This hooks up one end, and there's the plug, and obviously the diode on the other. And the part number, this is a Stens number, STENS. They're an excellent aftermarket company. 435-115. 435-115. Now on here, according to this, the Briggs & Stratton number, you ready? 393-814. That diode will handle those alternators with excellence. Never had a failure. Not that I remember anyway. It's only been 40 years. Okay, now next, and this is how I found the pigtail, was completely by accident. All right. Now here, this is funny as heck. There's a pigtail. Over here you can see the actual plug. So that little fork snaps over those things, and it works quite well. I mean, it actually snaps, locks on, and they have an excellent life. I've seen original equipment. These aren't, well, this one's original equipment. The other one's Stens. Part number, Briggs & Stratton part number, 692306. Wire assembly, replacement for models. They say models, but these are part numbers. You ready? Because on other sites, they might use the old numbers instead. 393422. And the other number is the same number, 692306. So the number you're looking for is 692306, Briggs & Stratton. Yes, it's backwards, I know. But those two will bail you out of a problem with your system. I'm going to say 99%. There's always that freak. Okay, what else have we got here? There was some other stuff I found that was interesting in the past that I put in this list, and I saw it. Key switches, something else to remember. There are 2 types of Briggs & Stratton fuel filters. This is coarse, without a fuel pump. This is fine, with a fuel pump. This is, I think, 60 or 70 microns, someplace in that range. And the white one down here is 100, depending on the year, who you talk to, and who has what, it's 120 to 150 micron. Oh, sorry, the other way around. The red one is coarser, 120, 150 micron. The other one is only about 60 or 70. I've got it mixed up, sorry. I was playing with my 20 gauge shotgun, okay? Bigger number, smaller hole. You know how they come up with gauge versus actual caliber? Caliber is a decimal size, period. All right, so if you got a 243, it's 0.243. Yeah, just 23 thousandths larger than a 22. We're traveling at a heck of a lot higher velocity and a lot more weight. 20 gauge, how do they come up with that? What they come up with is they take a pound of lead, and you can make 20 balls to fit that barrel properly. 20 gauge. 12 gauge, it's bigger. That same pound of lead, that is correct. You only get 12 balls out of it. That's gauge. How about 410? No, they call it 410 gauge, but it's not a gauge. It's 0.410 bore. But anyway, that same idea here backwards. This is like caliber, okay? When you're using the red, gravity feed systems, bigger holes, more stuff goes through, but it has to. The other one is a fuel pump. It's finer. It can push it through or draw it through most often. So that's something to remember there. Another beautiful thing. These two right here. Your grommet, and up here is your metal fuel shutoff. Oops. Well, there's the grommet and the metal fuel shutoff. Sweet. I popped one in a while ago. Now the other one works well too, but you have to remember this is what it is. It's the same idea, grommet, but it's a plastic valve that goes direct in the tank here, and you have a screen on it. The screen's not replaceable, but you can clean it. And on the other end, the nipple, you can put 3/16 or quarter-inch fuel line on. Excuse me. So that works out very nice. And what I have done with these things is they'll tell you it's for this and that and all this other stuff. This is a HIPAA shutoff valve for Briggs & Stratton number here, I do believe. 192980. That's the plastic one. GS, I forgot that. It might be a HIPAA number, but whatever. If you put that number in, you should be able to come up with that. The other one, the metal shutoff, let's see if they even give me a number. No, they don't. 3360 force fuel tank hole. Well, that's important to know because that's just a little bigger. I drill half-inch holes and you're just able to get it in there. If you have an old tank, it won't work properly. It'll have too much force and it'll crack. Just a fact of life on either one of these. But they're designed for a half-inch hole. And they do work, and they work very well. I have several of them out here that I'm using now on lawn tractors that I run around and do very little on the lawn except cart stuff around. What? No. Oh, okay. Debbie's got some stuff in the cart here. Just wanted to be sure I didn't have anything in her way. So those are some things that might help you out with, even with your tractors. And you say, what do you mean? Well, you may have a tractor that has a fuel bowl on it that's bad, but you need a serviceable tractor. 30 horse and under. I don't recommend it above 30 horse, and this fuel line stuff gets sketchy at 30 horse. But any of this stuff can work up to about 30 horsepower. If your fuel tank has a hole problem in it, you can't get anything in there. It's a mess, but you can get a plug in there, or you're able to clean the tank out and solder it or weld it or braze it shut. Now, when you do those things, your tank's unserviceable, correct? Well, if you get it right, you make a half-inch hole in there, put the grommet in, lube the snorkel dinghy. Yeah, it looks terrible, but that's what you do. And you slide that valve up in there, you now have a quarter-inch line contact. It works better on your tractors that are going to be under 30 horsepower. 15, 20, 25. If you got small Kubotas, easily. And on your 30 horse tractors like my Ferguson 35, I'm pretty sure it'll work on that as well. Might be a little restrictive. It'll let you know that too. Now, the other part too is you don't have a fuel bowl anymore. You have to run the red filter in there, or one with a similar micron rating that's a double larger filter. Don't run a paper filter. You will be disappointed. And if you do, now you can't use those valves. You'll have to put something in that tank that's larger. 3/8, 5/16. Why? Because you need more fuel. You need a bigger hole so that the level of fuel pushes harder on gravity-fed machines. A quarter-inch hole, it's only pushing down with atmospheric pressure on the fuel through a quarter-inch hole. 5/16, now it has more surface area to push that fuel down through. Even though on the other end it's a teeny little hole to go through. It makes a difference getting the fuel there and actually giving a little atmospheric force to get it in there. Doesn't change any pressure, but it changes the force because of the surface area. 3/8, 5/16, quarter-inch. Quarter-inch is just adequate for the small stuff. So that's one way to bail something out that you want to keep going, and maybe not necessarily original. But in some other cases, if you want it to look original and it's under panels, I would recommend repairs like this in a tank that's in there, or even put a plastic tank inside the metal tank, find a way to fill it through there, and then stick something up in there. Just a thought, because I did something similar out here. Metal tank went horrendously bad. There was no fix. Had to throw it out. It actually froze and separated it. No sense in even messing with it. Tossed it and bolted a plastic tank on top, but it was smaller and just about fit where the metal tank was. So what I'm saying is you might be able to do something funny like that. Put a plastic tank in, mount it up here, put a valve in there, cut a hole in the side so you can shut it on and off. Now, also you can get an inline shut off for that. What's that got to do with alternators? Well, actually, it has nothing to do with alternators. It's just an idea of how to further fix your antique tractors. Hey, Utah. Yeah, that's what, 2 hours behind us out there? Oh, California's 3. That's quite the distance out there. Anyway, I just figured I'd throw some of that stuff out there about the alternator. Remember, on your Delco 10 and 12 SIs and almost any other one you're going to have, you've got your 3. Number 1 is your exciter to go to the key switch where you put your diode in, or an idiot light of the proper wattage. The lower the wattage, how can I say it? I don't know. You have to check the bulb because they need somewhere between 10 and 60 ohms resistance. So when you turn the key off, your ignition system and or your tractor diesel shutoff solenoid will operate. Okay. And I mean operate as in you turn the power off, they shut off. Because the alternator will backfeed. It's off of number 1. So number 1 is your exciter, the one you need to put the diode in or an idiot light. Number 2 is hot. You can have it hot all the time. Quite often you'll find them going all the way up to the dash at the key switch and turning around and coming back down. You say, why do they do that with a hot lead on number 2? For one main reason is that there's always a teeny tiny minuscule drain feeding the regulator inside that unit. It hasn't turned on yet with no power to number 1, but there's always just a little juice in there, and for some reason some of the alternators have more of a leak than others, and you'll go a month and have a dead battery. Especially if you use a smaller 300 and something cranking amp battery in your small tractors. It'll drain them. All the lawn and garden stuff that I have the trouble with these newer small batteries, it'll run them dead inside of a month on a small engine system with an alternator and a regulator rectifier. So what do? I'm putting in, you say, just disconnect your battery. That's right. I put a battery disconnect in, pull the key. That works for me because I have a toggle on the dash. So now I have a key. What are you going to do with that, buddy? You're going to have to push it if you're going to steal it. And that's the idea there. But you need something that disconnects the battery from those systems because they will drain slightly. Ferguson proved that it doesn't very often. And the Ferguson is a single wire. But you'll see a black plug where the 1-2 inline plug normally is. There's a black plug there. And in some cases, there actually be terminals with no plug. Or there'll be terminals there with a cap on them. It's some weird stuff when you go to the one wire. You don't know what you're getting into, but you know it's one wire. Just make sure that's covered up enough so that it's splash resistant for rain or something else. I prefer the one wire. You see, my idiot light doesn't work. No, but your voltmeter will. You need to put a voltmeter in there. Period. Done. End of story. Put a voltmeter in there. It's important. You say, why is it important? Well, because it is. If you have a voltmeter, you can watch it. When you turn the key on, it'll go to 12 and a half volts, and then you fire the thing up. You can watch it. And here's the beauty of it. It's also now, as you have a voltmeter, is diagnostics. Ooh, yeah, diagnostics. You turn the key on, it goes up to 12 and a half volts, and in some of the newer cases as high as 13. But there it sits, whatever the normal for that battery is. Well, now you can watch that and have an idea what's going on. It's not 100% because they're not that great and they're not that accurate, but you know what your normal is for a well-charged, well-run, good working battery. So you turn it on, you start cranking, and it takes a little longer than normal, and you notice all of a sudden the needle coming down below 10. Now you have an idea your battery, either A, your battery's not in that good a condition, or B, your starter has a problem. Diagnostics, immediate. Idiot light doesn't tell you that, and the ammeter is not going to tell you that. The voltmeter will. You haven't even started your machine yet. Well, then perchance you see it coming down and it's still cranking okay, but you hear it slowing down as the needle goes down, and then it fires up and starts running, whoop, and goes right up to 14 and a half. In some cases, unfortunately, 15. 14 volts is optimum. 13 and a half to 14 is generally considered optimum for most machines, and the diesel's 14. because the starters are so large they have a bigger draw. And then they will pull it down further. So 14 and a half to really keep your battery peaked up there. Anything over 14 and a half is bad. Actually, anything over 14.2 is not good. If you have a lot of accessories, like you turn all your lights on and everything with it, then your accessories are 25 amps and you've got a 35 amp alternator. Yeah, that's one of the reasons they go to 14 and a half and sometimes 14.7 on the old GMs. True story. They used to go up 14.7, almost to 15, but not quite. Why? You turn the accessories on. It's the closer the alternator gets to peak amp output, the volts start coming down. Why? They're matching watts going out of the alternator at maximum. So when the alternator starts getting near 35 amp at 30 amps, you're going to notice it ain't putting out 14 and a half volts anymore. Well, now it's optimum. The battery loves it. So that's another thing just to keep your eye on. And there you sit. You got your voltmeter. No, it's not original, but it's a lot better. I bought a bunch of them, 3, 4 of them, I can't remember. One went bad. I think I tossed it. Another one was supposed to go on a machine and is now out here on my Ford. I got an LGT 120 Ford with a voltmeter in it to watch it, and it also has a battery disconnect switch, so I can shut the battery off when I'm done because the toggle switch runs the ignition. Now, if I'd have done a lot of fumbling around prior, I could have put that up here and used that as my key switch, but that's not the point. Point is I can turn the juice on and use the toggle switch on and off during the day. When I leave, turn the thing off, disconnect the battery. Then now nothing in the system except the battery itself can discharge it. The negative side is disconnected, period. And the switch is now plastic, which in cold weather makes me wonder, but at the same time, plastic, you're not grounding out, are you? And internal carbon tracks, a lot harder. So, just a thought. There's a couple kinds that I found out on there, and on a lawnmower, if you've got one for 100 amps, it's plenty. So you get up into the Kohlers, 14 horse, 16 horse, some of those in the later V-twins, you want something that'll handle 150 amps. But I do have a Briggs & Stratton 11.5 horse out there that's running on, is it 12 or 10 gauge wire? It starts excellent on a little battery that I don't have to charge the thing all season long. Yeah, it just sits there, runs perfect. I'm on year 3, same battery. I rewired it so I can just plug a jumper in. A little 75 amp, those plastic gray plugs. Works fantastic. Just plug it in, can't screw it up. And it's on a little 1 amp charger. It's a maintenance charger, which is good because usually you plug the thing in and a maintenance charger does its turn on and off and keep the thing at whatever level, not to overcharge it. Wish they did that for lithium batteries a little more often. Go on YouTube here, and I forgot the guy's name. Stacked? Yeah, it's spelled stacked with a capital S and a D at the end is a big D, and he's a fire chief someplace and a fire investigator. He'll tell you stories about lithium-ion batteries and show you pictures. I had one of them that the problem was in the trailer, unhooked the tractor from the trailer, fire department showed up, and they pulled out the old, what do they call it, K12? Cut saw, chop saw. They started cutting through the exterior, which is usually aluminum, but somehow they hit something, one of the steel supports inside, caused a spark and blew the doors off the back end of the thing. Shot the suckers like 50 to 100 feet. Yeah. Lead acid wins for me. You folks have a good day. And remember, when it comes to electricity, just take your time and do some thinking. And before you go on, and do yourself a favor, before you go on the forums, before you go on even some of the things that I'm in on Facebook, with the Alice Charmers, the D17, and the antique tractors and Ferguson and some of these others. And before you start asking questions, go online and do a little scientific style research about certain things. And then run into guys like me that are on here on YouTube. I'm not the only one. There's quite a few others on here, and I try to keep it to 1 or 2 topics. It's not too often I'm going to talk about ugly women. I did define that, though, didn't I? Quite nicely. Anyway, That's something to keep you folks thinking. And I see people are popping in and out here, and it's kind of a waste of time after a while. But there are a lot of people that's 35 minutes and change now that do listen this long, and hopefully that'll help you learn something when you're working on these. Now remember, on your lawnmowers, let's just do a little recap. You've got your starter generators, and there's almost no way to turn that over into an alternator. Okay, there's no, how can I say it? There's no place to mount a starter so that you can run a 10 SI alternator on the thing, and it'd take too much power to do it. So you have a starter generator on your machine, and then you have a separate regulator. How do you test it? Well, you crank it over, that immediately handles the fields, as far as we used to call polarize the fields. That's done as soon as you turn it, because quite often these things can be bad and still start the engine. It sounds funny, but it is true. Once it's running, what do you do? Well, once it's running, you can take a jumper lead from the A terminal, which is armature, where the juice comes out and the starter power goes in. Take that, hook it to the battery, and see what happens. Nothing happens? All right, then I recommend disconnecting the F terminal field, but I don't always do that. Why? Because you got your jumper to the hot lead. That means your regulator isn't making this thing work. You can disconnect it. That takes a regulator out of the circuit if it has a problem, because sometimes it's rare, but it'll internally ground or short and cause a problem in the regulator. So if you can get that disconnected, so you got your hot wire, the thing's running, you take the field off or shut the thing off, and then go from there. Excuse me, disconnect your field, start it back up again. And the trick now is you've got your hot wire put back on there, because if you shut that off with a hot wire connected, it's going to continue to run on that generator. That's how that works. It runs it through the generator itself to get power back to the battery, but that heavy lead is what runs the starter part of the generator. Well, now that it's running, you got it running, reconnect your heavy lead and take the F terminal with a jumper lead and ground it. Everyone that's a Delco is a grounding field circuit, meaning it's the hot lead with juice going out is connected to one part of the field, goes through one set of fields, goes across to the other set of fields, comes out that terminal and grounds. If it isn't grounded, externally that is, it doesn't work. If it's grounded internally, it'll start to work and go full bore. Bad. I've seen it happen one time. I overhauled an engine for a guy and told him, I don't repair these things. I overhaul engines. There's a guy over there you need to go see to get your generator repaired. But it starts. Yes, but it doesn't charge properly. It's internally grounded and it'll run your engine out. Well, he mowed, I think, a half an acre. It was 1.5 feet and melted the head down. Fortunately for me, I put synthetic oil in it, knowing he was a jerk. So it can cause a serious problem if you're driving along and all of a sudden, Rawr! Yeah, that's what it is with a starter generator. Sound effects notwithstanding. But if you ground that field, just watch the spark when you do it, though. Just touch it to a clean nut or bolt or ground someplace. And it should have a nice little arc spark, just a little one, and it should start charging, bring you up to 13.5, 14 volts. And it'll keep climbing as it charges the battery. It's a shunt wound deal. So that thing, unless there's amps going out, it will keep climbing. You go to 18 volts, sometimes 20 volts. It's unregulated. And the higher the RPM, the more volts that come out of it. It's ugly without that regulator. But it can charge the battery and do a nice job. I had one of them, I put a test light on there and it was just right. So I go out and mow the lawn until I was able to afford a regulator. Worked good for a while. Something to keep in mind, the other reason to have the proper regulator on there is that also it takes down the parasitic load, where while it's running and charging, it's charging at a reasonable rate. When the battery's fully charged, it might only be an amp or two coming out of it to feed the ignition. That's it. So there's no way to change it, but that's the way to test it. Now the others with the internal alternator, as I said before, you're looking for roughly around 30 volts, give or take 1 or 2. And that'll give you an idea. And if you're having trouble with it charging, you got your 30 volts, then connect your regulator and see what's coming out of there directly. There'll be 3 terminals. There'll be 2 for the AC feed of the alternator. Oh yeah, there's 2 AC, one high, one low, and it reverses. And then the other one is your DC lead coming out of the regulator rectifier. There is no way to test it otherwise other than what's coming out of that regulator rectifier. And if you hook up to the battery and nothing's charging, but you're having trouble with your battery, especially it's boiling or smelling or something weird after a while, fire it up with your voltmeter on AC, connect the one lead to ground and the other lead to the battery, and see if you aren't coming up with an AC voltage. If you get half a volt, 1 volt, 1.5, that's not too bad. This is diode bleed over. It's not good, but it means your regulator rectifier is working in general. Usually it's 1 volt or under to 0. But occasionally I've had them work well up to 2 volts. That's not good, but it'll work. But you'll notice the batteries boil up, and the batteries, you'll see more acid forming on your batteries, and it gives you an idea your regulator rectifier ain't rectifying well. So there should be almost 0 volts on AC coming out of that thing. So just keep that in mind when you're checking it. Now that's out the hot lead, okay? I'm going to go anywhere along that hot lead coming out of the regulator rectifier to ground. That should be reading voltage, but it shouldn't be AC volts. You start reading up the 2 volts and higher, you're into serious battery boiling trouble. As crazy as it sounds, just for one brief second, it reverses the polarity on the battery, even if it's 2 volts. It starts making things go bad fast. Ripple test is what a lot of guys like to call that. Another part of the ripple test is you'll have a machine that is so sensitive, it'll actually measure on your Delco alternators and those styles. There's usually 3 coils in there, 3 separate A, B, and C style coils, or L1, L2, L3, depending on who's doing what. And they'll measure those ripples individually coming out of there, because what do? Your regulator rectifier is reversing where you had this wave positive and this way negative. Well, essentially it's reversing so that you actually have a power feed from both sides of that coming out positive. Sounds crazy, but they make that thing work with those diode trio. So that it rectifies the waves coming out of there. Diode trio usually feeds the regulator, but they also have a diode bank. You have anywhere between 3 and 6 diodes that are in there, positive and negative. So depending on the cycle it's on, it allows positive energy to flow through. It'll block the negative energy coming out of there. It converts it. It's pretty interesting, and that's how one of the reasons they have a ripple test is to see how that is. And the ripple test is in the alternator itself, tell you if one of the legs is bad. That's the fancy one. The one that I'm talking about is ripple test outside, that you can actually see your DC spikes as they come out from each leg if it's running slow enough or you got something sensitive enough. But when you start measuring AC, that's a bad ripple. That's what's important. Anyway, I got 2 thumbs up and everybody's disappeared from the chat. You folks all have a good time. No, I didn't stop to say hi to everybody and what's going on because I want to get the information out of there. And I need to get myself somewhat to work. I've been convalescing for the last week and a half, almost 2 weeks now. So I've been cutting firewood, and I had a hernia repair years ago that came from coughing from a lung problem from working in a flood zone, even with a mask on, working in flooded equipment. And I coughed, and the whole center section here is nothing but sutures and mesh and all kinds of stuff to pull it together. He told me, oh, no problem. We'll be out of there 45 minutes tops. An hour and 20 minutes later, I think Debbie said, almost an hour and a half later, she was getting nervous. I didn't know the difference. I come out and they said, how do you feel? I said, oh, fine, why? And they started telling me about the time and such. I started laughing. She said, what's so funny? I told Doc, I don't think it's going to be that simple. I've been coughing for years. I was actually coughing for only about a year or so, but I'm more prone to pneumonia now. I can catch that very easy. Bronchitis. They call it chronic. But anyway, what happens is not coughing even, but I was out there working firewood for several weeks, a couple of days a week. This is getting worked nicely. I was enjoying it. And then I went out and shot a deer and I found a lot of hair and a bunch of blood and started following the thing. Well, for 5 hours, we're out trancing the woods. And I even had a walking stick with me for my bad knee. And everything was already irritated and I didn't realize it. And I came back sick. It's taken till today. This is the first morning that I haven't felt queasy from irritation and the muscles just shuddering there. If you have to get your hernia fixed, it's poking through and causing trouble, get it fixed. If you don't have to get it fixed, I don't care if it's bulging out your side. Don't. The fix isn't a fix. Well, maybe I should say the fix isn't a repair. It's like cutting a piece off another tire and putting it inside a ripped tire from two different tires to try and patch and hold the thing together. That's what it's like. Bolt it in place. It took me 5, 6, 7 years, I think, before I could work a full day without pain. I had to be careful doing that. Yeah. Yeah, I could just turn up sick if I worked real physically hard one day. Just turn up sick with irritation all over the place for years. But each time I did, I'd get sick for half a day or a day. I may or may not be able to go into work. And then the next time, I was able to go further. Taking me that long to work to this point where I could cut firewood all the way across, walk 5 miles in a 10, no, it's 2 to 3 miles in a 5 or 10 acre woods. Yeah, well, what's two? I'd say somewhere between 5 and 10 acres. No, I'm not good at guessing acres, and I wasn't sure of the boundaries all that much as well either, but I'm thinking it's approaching 10. And we walked that for 4 or 5 hours looking for the deer I shot, and finally got to the point where he healed up, and he ran up a creek bed where there was no footprints. And then we ran into some briars we couldn't get around or through, so we had to leave. Nothing we could do. We're on the neighbor's property as it was, where we weren't supposed to be necessarily. So, well, no. This was a case of, no, we don't go there. So, well, okay. Because I was talking with somebody who owned the property there and knew the neighbor that we were trudging on. Sadly, we had to let the thing go. It was a nice deer. Was. Probably still alive. Oh, 30-30s? He said, you never did. No, it's only 80 yards. It was a good shot. There's one problem. I had a Hornady too. Turns out it was a Hornady Light. Reduced recoil, which means reduced power. They're trying to say it didn't reduce power. It did. It's still a 150. Should have done just as well as any other, but no. Next time I shoot with it, it's going to be Federals. It probably won't be till next year. But the accuracy was excellent. It was right where I put it, even with my bad eyes and my sight. So, but that walking around there for 4 or 5 hours, plus having cut firewood the week before and done some splitting, I've been a mess for 2 weeks. So anyway, that's where that's at. Debbie's going to be coming from the dog park after a while. Somebody sent me a boink on my phone. Let's see if it's even relevant to something. As long as I've wasted this much time. Oh, that's all. Somebody who might be a future customer, depending on how things go. Basically my diagnostics were worth more to them than the actual repair work that I did. Because the diagnostics, I played by percentage where the problem, knew what the problem was, where the problem was, and gave them the suggestions how to fix it. And they said, hey, you interested? And that's where I went from there. Oop, got to turn off my studio lights. They're going to go low. You folks have a good day. And yes, this thing's on a stand that I made. And remember, with electrical, a voltmeter and a test light will do more than you'll ever need. If you're poking around something with a computer, make sure it's a high impedance LED test light. Never. You're a fool if you say never. Okay. Now there's voltmeters that you can get inside the test lights too. They'll have a test light and a voltmeter. And I've got my hands on one that was not a high impedance, which means high resistance type of meter. So it could actually shut circuits off sometimes. It drew more juice to run the meter than even a lighted circuit could handle. Yeah. So be careful which of those that you purchase. Most all of them are high impedance now, high resistance. So it's not a problem. You can even test some of the circuits. There are some test lights that have 2 lights in them and 2 leads. You hook them on the battery. It has a little green LED to tell you it's on. And the other light will go red or green. Red for positive and green for ground. It's kind of backwards, but that's the way they'll do it. And if you disconnect the black lead, the light isn't on. But still you can touch powered circuits and it'll turn the light on red for power in that circuit. But like anything else that's not an incandescent bulb, it won't give you an idea of how much voltage is in there, because how bright or dim that bulb is gives you an idea of the voltage. And if you're one of those guys that has one of those little beepers, that's nice just to tell you something's there. But I've had some times where the thing beep pretty healthy, and it'll change with the voltage. It'll work 3 to 24, some of them. But it doesn't tell you how good the voltage is or how good your ground hand is while you're doing that. But it'll give you an idea that the circuit has power to it. And sometimes it'll even find a short for you, but not very often. They work good on a truck where you don't want to run a lead from the back of the truck all the way to the back and you can't just disconnect stuff. It helps. Let's put it that way. Anyway, you folks be good. Have a good day. And remember, voltmeter, voltmeter, voltmeter. So, well, yeah, but an amp meter helps in your diagnostics. The voltmeter and the ohm meter are the key. Just be sure if the circuit's powered, you're on the V and not on the O.